Well, he's one of the most colourful and controversial public figures of our time. Brilliant, intellectual, Oxford-educated, an orator. But he's also wildly funny and entertaining. Former British PM Boris Johnson rose to fame globally, backing Brexit, but his time in office was often controversial. He'll open up about all of this when he visits Sydney and Melbourne in December, and I spoke with him ahead of his Australian tour a little earlier today. Boris Johnson, so great to see you. Thank you for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Look, it's less than a week to go until the US election. Donald Trump famously asked Theresa May in front of the cameras why you weren't Prime Minister at the time. Would you like to see Donald Trump return to the presidency?
Well, listen, it's very, very sweet of you to have me on your show. It's wonderful here. But as I explain in my book, Unleashed, which I will be relentlessly plugging when I get over to Australia in the early part of December, the job of the UK Prime Minister is to be friendly with whoever is the President of the United States. But you will also discover in Unleashed some paradoxical and interesting things about what Donald Trump was like to work with, and it kind of goes against a lot of the negative stuff that you sometimes hear about Donald Trump, because my experience of him as Foreign Secretary, when I was Foreign Secretary, and then when I was Prime Minister, was actually he did some stuff that was bold and decisive, and that really made the world feels safer. And a couple of things I'll cite, and they're all in the book. But the way he punished Bashar al-Assad for using chemical weapons against his own people, the way he was really tough with Iran, with Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Quds Force. Remember, he more or less vaporized the guy. There was only his signet ring left. And then, people talk a lot about Donald Trump. And is he going to be soft on Putin? Has he got this kind of strange thing that's going on in the Republican Party, where they kind of have a fanboy, thing about Putin, which I personally don't share at all. I don't think so. And you look at what Trump actually did on the Russian file when he was president from 2016 to 2020. The two things I would single out that were incredibly important. He decided, after we had the terrible poisonings in Salisbury, Trump massively surprised on the upside. And the United States expelled 60 Russian diplomats, which was the biggest expulsion since bigger than any, I think, that had happened even in the Cold War. And that was Donald Trump who did that, kicked out Putin's spies. And number two, a lot of people talk about Trump and Ukraine. Is he going to be solid? What's going to happen? I just remind you what he actually did when he was president. Unlike, and it's all in Unleashed, you will read it, and I'll be talking about it on BorisUnleashed.com when I get to Australia. What he actually did was to give the Ukrainians lethal weaponry, which the Democrats had not done when they were in office. And Donald Trump actually gave the Ukrainians the shoulder-launched Javelin anti-tank weapons, which was so important in that battle for Kiev in the spring of 2022. So all I can say, people endlessly, it's not the job of UK prime ministers to get involved in, or UK politicians to get involved in American elections any more than we would get involved in Australian elections. It's just, we're great, friendly democracies. It's not how we do things. But I would just say, chapter and verse in here, there's some pretty surprising and paradoxical things about, what people say about Trump and what he actually did when he was in office. And I'm content and I'm optimistic to judge him on the basis of what he did. That doesn't mean that I didn't have a very high regard for Joe Biden as well, and had a good relationship with Kamala Harris, and Biden's been very strong on Ukraine in particular. But look at the record.
Boris, do you think there's been an unfair campaign to try put Donald Trump in jail so that he can't be president again?
I think it was look. I mean, the various legal cases have wound their weary way before the courts, and my impression of them is that they were essentially trying to deprive the people of the opportunity of voting on Donald Trump. And it was a kind of lawfare designed to take out a candidate. And again, shoot me if you think this is too optimistic. But they were trying to take out a candidate that a lot of people don't like, they don't like his style, don't like the things he does, the things he says. And I kind of get all that, but I think it backfired. And whatever, I disagreed very much with what happened on January the 6th. That was absolutely terrible. On the other hand, look at what is happening now. And as we talk, we're only days away from an election in the United States where Donald Trump is out competing for every vote that he can get. He's trying to win another term of office, as is Kamala Harris trying to win the presidency. And they're both trying, by purely democratic means, to secure popular support. And here's the incredible thing. We don't know. Neither of us knows. Nobody knows. And not even, I'm here in New York, but nobody knows who is going to win that election. Now, that is a fantastic thing, because there are countries, big and important countries in this world, powerful countries, where that is not true, where the outcome of so-called democratic elections are well known in advance. Look at Russia. Look at China.
You were with the Queen 2 days before she sadly passed away. You saw the Queen for an hour most weeks. You talk in the book about pouring your heart out. You describe it as free psychotherapy. What was the best advice she ever gave you?
The convention is, of course, that you can't really talk about a lot of the conversations you have with the Queen. You certainly can't talk about any political conversations that you have with her. But I think, without breaking my Privy Council oath, I can say what she said in her last conversation with me, which was 2 days before she died. And she was absolutely brilliant. She maintained her total grip on world affairs. And, she'd seen every US prime minister since Eisenhower. US president since Eisenhower. She'd met every French president from Charles de Gaulle to Macron, every Chinese leader since Mao. And she knew everything. What did she say? She said a great thing in life is not to be bitter, because in the last conversation I was sort of saying, well, because one of the reasons I'm giving this interview to you now is I was untimely removed from my job, and one of the points I make in Unleash is a great shame, because I think we would have won the 2024 election if that hadn't happened. But she was saying to me, well, it's very important in life not to be bitter. And she was saying that it was good that I didn't seem to be at all bitter, and I wasn't, and I'm not. So she said, don't be bitter. Point number one, good advice to all politicians: don't be bitter. Don't be actuated by bitterness. But she also said something quite interesting. I don't know whether, do you have a phobia of magpies in Australia? Does anybody have a phobia? Do you have a phobia of magpies?
Magpie season in September, and they do swoop, and you see cyclists, particularly in the national capital, Canberra, cycling around with, buckets and funny things on their head to avoid the swooping magpies. Yes.
Really? Okay, well, so there's a saying in England: 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, right?
Yeah.
So if you see a single magpie, it's bad luck. And there are lots of people who I know who have this phobia of single magpies. And I mentioned this to Her late Majesty the Queen, and she said she had exactly the same thing. But she had a cure for it. She had a spell. She had a way of dealing with it. And it was when she saw a solitary magpie, she would say, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie. Today is the 30th of October, 2024, or whatever it is today." Is it? I think it is the 30th of October, 2024. And that does it. And then your single magpie problem is gone.